Welcome to the show, everyone. We are on the road. We are driving to Yosemite and June Lake area for the very first time. And it's a long trip, so I thought we would record a podcast. And I am here with Doug Sandler.
Hello. It's called the Roadkill Podcast.
No.
It's called the Roadcast Podcast.
We're not going to kill anything.
Let's not kill. It's the Roadcast. Let's just call it the Roadcast.
We are on the Roadcast.
Such beautiful country. Man, oh man, this is beautiful rolling hills as we're driving along the route on our way towards Yosemite.
Yeah, we passed some rocks, like a red rock area.
Couple of rocks.
No, but they look like Sedona almost, and
Yeah.
I've never seen that here, so that was kind of fun and cool, but there was nothing there, unlike Sedona, which is very cool and lots of things there. Those red rocks had nothing going on in terms of human activity. So anyway, we're driving, and one of the topics I wanted to record on that we haven't made time for, but now we're sitting here having plenty of time, is on the topic of money management for couples. This has come up because several of you in the community are in situations where, and maybe it's because I've never been in this situation, when I hear that I have to talk to my husband or I have to check in with someone else about spending money on myself or investing in myself. I know it happens. I grew up with parents that shared. My father worked, my mother didn't. My mother managed the money. But I'll tell you that even in my growing up, my mother didn't check with my father about spending money. Now, she wasn't an overspender and she didn't invest in big things, but she didn't check with him either. He just gave her the checkbook and said, here, and you pay the bills and you manage the money minus investments and things. So I was always in an environment of trust when it came to money, and that my father was, while he would not spend the same kinds of money on the same kinds of thing. I remember growing up thinking like he would see $60, $70 for a pair of jeans, and he'd probably freak out like, what? You're spending $100 on a pair of jeans? So we just didn't tell him. But but he didn't ask. And so that's the environment that I grew up in, where my mother, who didn't work, who didn't have a career, although she did work sometimes, but she didn't really work to support the family at all. She just worked sometimes to help out people or me. But I grew up in that kind of sort of easygoing with money, although, again, we weren't spenders, they were savers, but we had what we needed, and I got to do things. I even got to invest in a modeling career at one point. I don't know if any of you have 13-year-old girls who, get asked to do photo shoots, and then they upsell you on some expensive package of photos anyway, I did that. And my mother paid for it, and, I never heard anything from my dad about it, so I think we were fine. But what I want to address, and I want to share, and I want to talk about, and I want to question some of your beliefs and some of your practices. Because for me, one of the most important things is feeling free. And when you have a money situation where you have to ask permission for someone else to agree with your choice about how you invest your money into yourself, you are already a victim of whatever frequency or vibration or belief system that they have. So if they don't value what you value and they are uncomfortable, then all of a sudden your decision to do something is tainted and colored, and you're now a victim of circumstance to your partner who has limitations and fears. Now, I have had that, but I've never pulled my money completely with a partner and then had to ask permission or talk about every single thing that we spent. So I'm going to divert to Doug for a second, because he's had a couple different marriages and a couple different situations. And why don't we talk about a little bit about what I'm talking about right now and where you stand with this, Doug Sandler.
Okay, I want to make a comment before I make other comments about how my money relationship was with my two previous marriages. Sometimes people are saying I need to check with my significant other, my spouse, my boyfriend, my husband, whatever it is, whoever it is. They are saying that because they don't feel the confidence to make a decision themselves. That's number one. The other thing that sometimes I feel when I hear that as a salesperson, because I'm a salesperson, I sell my services. Sometimes when the reasoning of I need to check with my partner or I need to check with my husband or my wife, it's said because they don't want to be the bad person to say no. And so they use that as an excuse sometimes, actually. Some people stand behind that line. Now, the reality of it is sometimes people do say, I need to check with my husband, my spouse, my significant other, because the reality of that is that they do want to check, and they run big decisions by them. So with that being said, I can, unless you have any comments about that, I can
Well,
get into
I'm
what it
talking
was.
about specific people who I know want to do things, but don't feel confident asking to do it, or feel out of balance, or don't bring in money, so they don't feel like they can ask to spend more money
Well,
because they don't bring in money.
I get that to a degree. Even if the relationship, I'll use my first marriage as an example. I was married for 20 years, and in that first marriage, I was the guy that was making the money, but she was the one that was raising the kids. And so that role was extremely important. It wasn't a money-making role, but it was a role that I couldn't have done anywhere near as well as she did, and she couldn't have brought in the money the way that I brought in money because I owned a business. So any of the decisions that were made, larger decisions, things like buying a car or doing a vacation weekend away, or certainly buying a property, or any large, I would say anything over $1,000 or $1,500, we would talk about. And so if she was put in a scenario where somebody was asking, will you be able to make a decision? And the response was, I need to check with my husband, me. I think the reality of it was, it must have been a big decision that she just needed some help. I didn't view that as a sign of weakness. At that point, I was viewing it as a sign of partnership and cooperation. Now, on the other side of it, some people hide behind that as I can't make a decision because I'm afraid of what my spouse will think if I make a decision to buy this thing, and this thing is $1,500 or $2,000, and I don't want to make that decision without them, because I don't want them to get mad at me.
No, I understand that. And this is why we're having this conversation, because I remember in one of my first millionaire mind money conversations about money management was that regardless of where the money is coming from, whether it be one person or two people, that each person needs to have their own money, because otherwise you feel trapped.
Okay, let me just add this. I think if you don't have your own money, meaning you don't have it segmented, you have the ability to make a decision. I think sometimes people don't really like to have conversations about money. So a lot of times people are not going to have they're not going to decide until it's time to decide. Like, they're not going to sit down and have a conversation ahead of time. Look, you and I are going to talk about this, and this is how this is going to work, because I think this is the best way to do this. We're going to each have the ability to make a decision, large or small, about money, and without the other person getting mad. And a lot of people don't have that kind of conversation. They're just, money is a very secretive thing. It's a very tight thing. They don't want to, it's a very private topic, and most people don't want to talk about it.
Because money represents control, money represents freedom, and whoever makes the money feels like they're in control. And the one that's not making the money doesn't necessarily feel in control.
Interesting, because I never, at least in my relationships, I never felt that way. Even though I was making money, I never felt like I had I was the one in control. Not that I was out of control, but I felt like she was an equal in the relationship, in the money relationship.
Well, looking at your first marriage, I don't know that she would have been investing in anything. Let's talk about the people in my community for a second. These are people that are listening because they want help with things, and they want to grow, and they want to rewire their core wound patterns, and they want to, have accountability and build community, and maybe even be a coach or start a business. And these are things that they really want, and they're on their path. And then they have a partner who may or may not be the breadwinner, who isn't on the same path, who is doing their own thing, who doesn't have the same belief systems potentially. And now that person who might really believe in themselves wants to make a decision and now has stress because they have to run it by somebody who's not in alignment with this conversation and is most likely going to upper limit for them.
Don't you feel like sometimes when someone is hesitant to make a decision about money, there are other issues other than just the money thing? It's not a control thing. I don't think it's a control thing. Maybe it is, but I don't think it's a control thing. I think it's hey, before I entered into this weekend where I knew that I was going to be asked to join a community, and let's say the investment was a significant investment, and that person, it's not like you walked into this environment unaware that you were going to be given an opportunity to join a community. So why didn't you just have the conversation ahead of time? Look, I'm going somewhere this weekend that I've spent money on, and I'm going to be given an opportunity to join a larger community, and it's going to cost money if I decide to join it. I'm just telling you ahead of time, I may come home having made that decision. That's a really mature conversation.
It is, and most people aren't there because there's shame. There's shame involved with, if they're not bringing in the money, they have shame about feeling like they deserve or that they can ask for that, because idealistically they think their partner is the one who's paying for it. And I want to give you guys a number that I looked up maybe at the beginning of this year, could have been end of last year. But for those of you that are the caretakers of the family, you're the housewife, you take care of the children, and you do the laundry, and you keep the house up. The going rate in the United States for a housewife and all of the duties included in that is about $130,000 a year. That would be the salary that you would be getting if somebody was giving you cash. Now, if you take that seriously, instead of what most of us do and just think it's expected, that what you're doing as a wife, as a mother, as a woman, this is what I have to do, and does it count? Then we go in a not even, like you just said, you felt like your first wife was an equal. And again, knowing your old life, if you will, I don't think she was coming home and asking to spend money on investing in herself in any way. Maybe, at the spa or getting her nails done or like buying some clothes or going out with the girls. That's one thing.
Can I say something though? If she had come home wanting to join a community or do a self-help program or anything, I would have encouraged her to, because I think it would have helped her grow. Okay,
great. And there are a lot of men, and I don't mean to make this a woman-man thing, because it could be a woman-woman thing, could be a man-man thing, but as a partner, there are some very highly supportive partners, and that's not what I'm talking about. If you are not a risk taker, and I am more of a risk taker, and if I had to come to you every time, like the wine, let's just put the wine out there. I have spent a lot of money investing in this wine project. Now, you would not have done what I have done in this way, because you would have looked at what I have and said, you can't really do that right now. And that's not how I operate, and that would have been very frustrating for me to feel like I had to get your buy-in in order for me to move forward. Again, it doesn't feel free. And ultimately, it's my risk, and ultimately, I wanted to take it. So same thing with you. I mean, obviously, I encourage you to spend money on yourself and go get some training and, invest in a mastermind for your company and, marketing and all that things, because I'm a big investor into myself and my business, because I'm my product, I'm my service, I'm running the company. I need to be my best, because my best is going to influence what I pull in and what I attract. So I just know there are a lot of people out there that feel, I don't know how you feel. I know how I would feel in that situation. I would feel a lack of freedom. I would feel frustrated. I would feel controlled. I would feel uneasy and frustrated that I couldn't just make the decision to do what I wanted to do. So part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because I learned something many years ago about couples, whether, again, depending on whoever. So let's say both couples are contributing to the pot, and both salaries are going into one bank account. First of all, I think that's a mistake. I think that's a bad decision.
Well, I think there's got to be a household account
yes,
where a household,
yes, of course.
Even you and I have a household account where we, but I think everything going into one pot, if you have two breadwinners, is very challenging, because then there's no autonomy and there's no ability to make a decision. I am a firm believer in multiple bank accounts for multiple things. Here's our self-improvement account. Here's our house account. Here's our vacation account. Here's our car emergency fund. Here's our pet fund. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I probably have 20 different savings accounts, even savings accounts that have just $100 in them, because there are certain things that I know are going to be expenses. Then when those expenses come up, it almost feels like it's free money to me. And for someone that is in your community that, let's say, is not the breadwinner in the house, but the family raiser in the house, to have no ability to make any financial decisions on their own without having a partner help them make the decision, I think that removes a lot of the freedom from the relationship.
Right. I agree. So let's say one person makes the money, most of the money, and you pull all of it. So what am I suggesting? I'm suggesting that each person decide what sort of salary slash compensation slash whatever, like something that you would get every month. So let's say both people pulled all their money in one account. Again, I think that's a bad idea, but if you do that, then you have two separate accounts. Each one of you have your own personal checking account or personal savings account, and every month from that big pool, you each pull out $500 or $1,000, and that goes into your account, and that's your money that you get to spend in whatever way that you want to, and no, you don't have to answer to anybody. And that at least starts the conversation of having some flexibility and freedom for you to make decisions about and save and invest in any way you want to without having to answer to anybody, because that is the ultimate freedom. And I think how most people do money is what stops you from growing, because you're always involving somebody else to have to approve or disapprove or trust or not trust or upper limit themselves or you with their own fears. When I was in my last relationship, not one of the reasons why, but I didn't grow as fast as I could grow psychologically and emotionally, because I thought I was afraid of a fear of abandonment. Like if I did what I'm doing now, I would be ridiculed, I would be judged, I would be shamed, I wouldn't be supported. So I stayed in the lane of personal training. I stayed in the lane of health and wellness. I inched slowly into emotions. But when Doug and I got together, the door blew open and I went straight for, I'm doing this. I'm doing emotional stuff. I'm doing healing stuff. I'm not a therapist, but I'm going to help people heal their emotions and their patterns. And here we are today. And my income probably doubled within the first year to 2 years, and went to places I've never made before. And it goes up and down based on what I'm doing. It's not really all about the money, but it's the idea that the freedom that I had allowed me to take bigger risks. I had the support because my money, as long as I could pay what we needed to pay for our stuff together, it didn't matter. You don't judge or ask me what I'm doing with my money, and vice versa. So what we do, of course, we have businesses. So our businesses have their own accounts, and depending on, like Doug has 2 businesses, and so he has 2 business accounts, but then he also has a personal account. He's got 1 million bank accounts, but whatever. He's got his personal account, and then we have a joint account. So I'm all for having the joint account. Definitely, you need your expenses covered. Doug does a great job of managing like all the taxes and the house payment and like the house taxes and things, food and stuff for the cats. And we have a budget that we put into that account every month. And then that's where the money comes from for groceries and for all of those house expenses. And I agree, I have a tax account and I have a tax bill coming up, and most of it's already there. And so now I don't have to pull from my regular income, because every month I pull out a certain amount of money for taxes. And sometimes I use it to pay ahead quarterly taxes. And in this case, I need all of it to pay my last year's tax bill. And but it's already there because it's been managed. And even though it might be tight taking it out at the beginning of the month or whenever, it's there, and it's a habit, and it's automatic, and it's something that I've gotten used to. So now, like you said, if you have an emergency fund, you're not scrambling to try to pull it from your cash flow. Let's go back to, and again, we're saying lots of things here. So I want to encourage all of you who feel that you're limited by other people's beliefs and upper limits and fears about money, to start thinking about changing the way you manage your money so that everybody feels a certain bit of freedom. And I really love the idea, again, whether it's one income or two incomes, that you figure out whatever stipend each person can take and stick into a separate personal account that person is not involved in. Now, they can be a benefactor later, obviously, for in case something should happen to you, but it's your access. And that way you can feel free to do whatever you want, which is what I think any healthy relationship would want to strive for, is that each person has a certain amount of freedom, like an allowance that you get to spend, so you feel free and you feel independent and you don't feel needy and stopped. And I agree with you, Doug. I agree with you that there are some people that say, I've talked to my husband or wife, and that is a cop-out of, I'm not going to tell you no, I'm going to blame it on them when it comes to a sale. But this conversation is not about that. This conversation is literally about people in my community who I know want to do things, but don't feel the right to ask for it or demand it because they don't contribute, so they feel like their spouse has the control over the money more because they make more. And I'm saying this, and that all that gets pulled into one place. And even if you're really good about managing it together, it's still the idea that you have to always ask permission in some way, shape, or form from somebody else to make decisions about what you want.
I think sometimes part of the insecurity when it comes to money is that people have more month than money, and they may feel like, hey, I can't make a decision that's a multi-$1,000 decision because we don't have that extra money just sitting in a bank account. And insecurity is created when you don't have solid communication about the funds that are coming in, and then what can you spend it on? What are you, quote unquote, allowed to spend that money on? When the word allowed comes into your vocabulary, that's giving somebody control, and that's not a good place to be. If you're an adult and you're listening to this and you're someone that wants to make a decision, and part of your hesitation in making the decision is because you're afraid of that conversation or you're insecure about that conversation, it's only because you haven't done an effective job of communicating with your partner ahead of time, whether it's ahead of time before the weekend that you come to see this thing that you want to invest in, or ahead of time, meaning as you're evolving in this relationship. I think it's a great conversation to have. Don't shy away from money conversations. It's easier to have a money conversation when you don't need to make the decision than coming home from a weekend away and saying, hey, I just spent $3,000 on something, and then having an argument over it. I think that's the wrong time to have that conversation.
I'm saying get a separate bank account so you don't even have to have that conversation, because it's a decision you felt so strongly about. I want to go back to your second marriage, because that one was very different than your first financially.
Totally, 100% different. She owned a business. She was an entrepreneur. I was an entrepreneur. We had a household account, and everything else was kept in our individual accounts, our business accounts.
And then there's us, which is pretty much the same.
Yeah, we have the same relationship. I would say that you are much more of a risk taker than I am. I'm a much more conservative investor of my business funds. You tend to take more risks. I would probably hesitate a lot more in making decisions than you. If we had a conversation every time you wanted to make a financial decision, it would be a hard, challenged relationship. Not because I think that what you do isn't right, but because we are two different people and we make decisions differently. We have different risk tolerances. It's kind of like when you go to a financial planner and you sit down and talk about what your investment strategy is, what level of risk are you willing to tolerate in your investments. The higher risk, the greater reward. So maybe JJ has some bigger peaks and valleys in her finances than I have, and maybe I'm more consistent with the amount of money that I have made over the years, but there's neither one is better or worse. It's just how you are as a manager of your funds.
And if I had to run by every decision that I was going to make about investing, we would not have a relationship.
No, that would be bad. Only because we so frequently make decisions about things. If every time I had to make a marketing decision, a buying decision about marketing with you, because we've decided to make decisions together, I'd be coming to you every month. And the same with you with any new business venture that you want to get into. We would have too many conversations about what is the possible risk, what is the possible reward, and because we have two different risk tolerances, it still wouldn't work anyway.
Right. Right. Our relationship is successful for the reason that we keep it separate. But we have joint things. We have, legal things of insurances and things that we have together. Of course, we have a house together. So we have equity in that and all of that good stuff. But I just wanted to start this conversation with you guys. I think I was originally going to do, and for those of you that did buy the early tickets to Awaken Your Dream Life from the webinar and you get the bonuses, you'll be invited to this session. I think I'd rather just do the session in the mastermind this coming year because, and then we can talk about a couples retreat or something else later. So those of you that got the class that Doug and I were going to do, you will be invited to the class or to watch the class when it's over as we do it live in the mastermind on one of the Conscious Business Academy calls. But Doug and I are going to do, a 2 hour, hour and a half to 2 hour presentation and workshop around this concept and we'll repeat some of this, but we're going to go over some of the money personalities and how to handle this and looking at different investment strategies and money saving and money making. So you've heard me say on the show, in fact, Doug and I had that conversation, where to find the money. That was our last episode that we did on making more money. And a lot of you have opportunities to make money in different ways that you're not doing. Again, you're going to one person or one company and then you feel trapped because you don't think you can make any more money. And that's not true at all. That's just one person who's paying you. There are millions of other people in the world that might be able to pay you for something, for some reason, for an affiliate deal or for, a one-time thing, or you have so many opportunities, but you haven't used your brain to practice that. And that's kind of what I hope to teach some of you, at least some of you who are in the mastermind, and some of you who listen to the podcast or join Empower You or whatever. Like, as you get a little closer, I can help you with some of that. And how can I is one of the episodes I always recommend. The How to Feel Better Right Now, the Price to Pay for Living Your Purpose. Those are the top 3 episodes I'd recommend. Stretching yourself into better results.
I'd like to do an episode on budget is not a 4-letter word.
Sure, babe. Yeah, we can do that. I mean, we have a lot of tools, and we're going to be sharing them with people who kind of step a little bit closer. But I wanted to just put this out generally to all of you to have you start thinking about how you can do money differently in your relationship. Is it stopping you? Is it something, like Doug said, that you want to stop you because you're upper limiting, and rather than taking responsibility for your own upper limit, you're going to blame your spouse? That's one thing. Do you want to keep growing? Do you want to feel more free? Well, what can you do about it? Because there's always something you can do about it. And whether it be getting professional help, having a conversation with your spouse, with your partner, using the couples dialogue to set some parameters, opening some new accounts, looking at different ways to save, looking at different ways to manage what comes in. Anyway, I just wanted to invite you all to expand the possibility of how you manage and create opportunity and investments for yourself. When you invest in yourself, it's not spending money, it's investing. Now, that's with the idea that you become an expanded version of you, which then allows you to make more, to attract more. If, we're not talking about spending money on clothes and shoes, and there's nothing wrong with clothes and shoes, but clothes and shoes don't necessarily make you an expanded being. It doesn't teach you how to receive or be more confident or, use your voice or believe in yourself in the world, which some of the things that I'm doing are wanting to do for you. In fact, that's probably one of the most consistent pieces of feedback is people feel seen and heard. They become more confident. They can find their voice and they go out into the world in a new way, and the world responds to them in a new way. So if you're someone who's feeling trapped in your relationship because of your money situation, maybe it's time to rethink how you look at that, how you talk about that, and how you manage that. Because if you are a caregiver, again, whether you're a man or a woman, there is a value to what you do equal to the value of someone bringing in cash. And asking to be able to have some kind of allowance or salary or whatever is not out of the realm of fairness. It is absolutely giving credit where credit is due for what you contribute to the family and to the household, regardless if it's cash or not. So, any last words, Doug, about this topic?
I'm excited to be able to have a deeper conversation about money with you, because I think it is one of those things that we don't talk a lot about.
You and me, or the community?
You and me with your community.
Got it.
Because we as a couple, we don't have a lot of money conversations, because I think that we're both pretty comfortable in what we do and how we manage our funds. So I'm excited to, and we have two definitely maybe opposing views on how to handle money. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you and the community, so your community can hear out how two people with opposing views can actually live in a really comfortable world together.
Well, here's where we're the same, and here's where it works, is that you said the exact right thing in my eyes when you moved to California and we were walking along the beach, and I told you I wanted to buy a Manhattan Beach Strand house, and you came from a place where the average house cost was what, like between $300,000 and $400,000?
Right, and we were looking at this. What was it?
$5 million.
$5 million house. I said, I guess we're just going to have to make more money.
Yep, that is the right answer. How do we get there? Instead of saying, nope, I can't afford that. Nope, never going to be able to afford that. I can't have that.
That's not
what Doug said.
That puts you in a box. And I don't think that anyone that's a part of your community wants to live in that box. We want to live with limitless potential. We want to live in an abundant world, and we want to live in a world where we know that if we just put the effort in, it doesn't mean harder work, it just means maybe more brain power into figuring out how you can afford it rather than I can't afford it. I think that we can all benefit from that. So I'm excited to be able to have a deeper conversation. Thanks for including me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you said the right thing. You said, well, we're just going to have to make more money. My father asked me when I moved to California, he'd always say, hey, Jay, you have enough money? I said, Dad, if I don't have enough, I'll go make more. I'll go get another job. This is the answer to the problem. Don't say money's a problem. Money's not a problem. What you're valuing your time and your skill sets and what you're allowing your limits to be is the problem. If you need more, figure out a way to make more. Figure out a way to get another job. Figure out a way to... There are so many ways to allow in more money. And sometimes they're not comfortable because they're going to stretch you and they're going to ask you to become different. And for a lot of you, even just the things that are available to you, there are some secret things out there. I won't lie. There are some secret things out there that when you get to certain income levels, that those people know that you don't know. Because you don't know that, because you don't need to know them, because you don't have the money to invest in them, right? But generally speaking, there are things that everyone has access to, like having your own business. If you have your own LLC, corporation, sole proprietorship, although that one isn't protected, so I'm not as big of a fan of sole proprietors, but LLC, let's just take an LLC. If you have an LLC, in most states, you have a couple of years where you can be in the red, where you don't have to make as much as you spend in that business because the government recognizes that it takes money to create a business. Let's just take a brick and mortar business, for instance. If you were going to build a store, you'd have to either buy or rent the land. You'd have to build the store or rent the store. You'd have equipment you'd need to buy. There would be a lot of money going out of your pocket straight away to building the thing before you ever made any money. And because of that, because the government allows you to do that, you can write off a lot of expenses. Let's say you have a full-time job, but you're starting a side business. Your full-time job takes out taxes for you. You have a taxable income that is set by your job. But if you started a side business with the intention, of course, to really do a side business, not as a gimmick to just save some money, and it took a couple of years to be profitable, every year all the expenses that you incur on that business can be taken and deducted against your income of your other job, which makes your tax liability lower, which means you get money back. So things like the mastermind, for instance, if you are interested in building a business, and forget the mastermind, but the mastermind's a way to start. But if you know what you want to do, and like I just said, a brick and mortar business, you usually get a loan from a bank. You have investors. You take a loan against your house. There are things that people do to find the cash to start this business that they trust in a couple of years will be cash positive. I'm saying that this is something that is available to everybody to start a business so that you can start writing off anything you do to contribute to that business so that your tax liability is lower. And most people are not doing this because they either don't know, they don't understand, this is something above their heads, but then they'll bitch and complain about people that pay less taxes. But this is loophole, so to speak. It's not a loophole, but this is part of what the government allows you to do and the reasons why. But most of you aren't taking advantage of that. Think about how much every single person in the mastermind who's had an income also has been able to get money back when they haven't made more, especially in the first year, and sometimes in the second year too, and even the third year, when their business hasn't quite made enough money yet. But they keep taking the deductions against their regular income and then getting money back at the end of tax season.
Just check in with your tax preparer, your accountant, or your tax attorney before you follow any of this advice. It is absolutely 100% dead on correct for what we do. Based upon what you do, results may vary. Closed track, professional driver, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, talk to your CPA or talk to a CPA that deals with small businesses. Don't go to a CPA that only works with W-2 employees because they're not necessarily as creative. Money and bookkeepers are very, very creative in how they manage money. And so you want to find a bookkeeper or a CPA or a tax accountant who deals with small businesses or even you can get free advice at the Small Business Association. But these are ways to invest in a dream, in a way to build a business that even could be part-time for the rest of your life. You could work your full-time job, work a part-time job, pay less taxes, make more money, and that is not doing anything wrong. It is completely legal. In fact, it's supported. They want people to have more small businesses. The government wants, there's grants, there's loans, there's credit card offers. There are things that small businesses get opportunities for because they want people to be more independent. They want people to create more jobs for other people because right now we're run by corporations, big conglomerate corporations, and people want to bring it back to the people. So if this is at all interesting, you're interested in this, right now there are a few spaces left in the mastermind for next year. And again, it's completely tax deductible. If you start a business, you can write it off. And you don't have to have a full-time income to start. You can, but you don't have to. In fact, I'd like you to be a full-time entrepreneur, but I'm also in the business of helping people to realize their dreams and start a business that's full of passion that they're interested in. So this is another way to do money differently, to invest in a path that will make you more money, and to also live in your zone of genius. So hopefully this conversation has stimulated your brain to start thinking differently about where you can learn how to do money differently in your relationship, to create freedom, to create abundance, and to utilize the laws, the taxes, the leeways, if you will, that are already out there, completely legal and supported by the government, for you to take advantage of what's there for you to use and to utilize for your highest good. All right, everybody. If you have any questions or you want more of this, reach out. You can fill out an application if you're interested in talking about the mastermind. There are some criteria like some emotional work that needs to be done, or at least have some plans to do. JJ'sinnercirclemastermind.com. Again, JJ'sinnercirclemastermind.com, and also Awaken Your Dream Life. Awaken Your Dream Life, if you have a business, can be a write-off. It can be personal development. It can be customer service training. It can be so many things. Awaken Your Dream Life is in January. JJFlizanes.com/Dream Life. These are all personal development investments in you, your business, your livelihood, your family, and your future.